What is it, Mike and Nick?
Whoop.
You're in the hot seat.
I am. This is the hot seat chair, I think.
Yeah. So our next couple topics are around remodeling, because remodeling is a big way of creating equity, creating value, and getting into investing if you're a new investor and need to kind of create something out of nothing. So buying something that's distressed and fixing it up is the way to go, and that's kind of how Heirloom got started 20 years ago. You and I started remodeling houses and figuring it out and built from there. And so Heirloom's a bit of a trades heavy business, but kind of started with us doing that. And tell me about your first remodel project that you did.
It's the biggest construction project I've done to date. That was the first one I did.
That's funny.
I bought a foreclosed condemned property. Got it really cheap, and it needed hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of work. When I bought it, I was not in a spot to be able to come up with that cash up front. And so after talking with you, it was around, I ended up doing a construction loan, is what it's called. And so it's like a BRRRR, but modified. And the way that works is that you'll go in and put a scope of work together and sort of paint the picture for the bank of what this property is going to look like and what you're going to do. And when they do the appraisal for your financing, they do an as completed valuation. So that encompasses your remodel cost and your purchase price. And then they'll loan you up to 80% of that. And typically it's on a draw. So as you do work, you can draw funds against it. But it's a way to finance in your construction costs so you don't have to lay out all of the cash ahead of time.
Yeah, got it. So in doing it that way, you know what it's going to be worth when you're done before you even start.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the funds are there.
Yeah. Have you ever done a remodel where you didn't know what it was going to be worth? The traditional BRRRR model where you buy, renovate, remodel, rent, and then refinance and kind of find out what it's worth at the end?
Yes. I did it right after I did my first one. On the first one I did a lot of the work myself back then, so I created a lot of equity, and my construction costs ended up being less than what I had anticipated, so I had some extra capital. And I used that to go buy another property, but I didn't do a construction loan. I put a traditional 20% down and then renovated. And that became a huge cash pinch. Like if I look back on where I was at that point, that was really tight financially because I was having to outlay all of the cost for all of the materials, any vendor work, all of that out of my pocket, hoping that the other property was going to have enough cash flow to help offset that. And it was just it ended up being a little bit more stressful going back and looking at it because there was also, I didn't know what it was going to be worth. I had an idea of what it was going to be worth, but I also didn't have any rent rates to prove it. I didn't have a completed, it's pretty easy to potentially overspend when you're doing those because your scope of work, there's always a little bit of a creep, but
How'd that shake out?
It ended up that I got the project done and completed, and I did do a refinance on it, but because things had kind of been so tight for so long, I ended up selling the property. It's kind of like the one that got away, because it was just a big cash, sink, and I was in my 20s at the time. We were, just finishing college. It was not the best time to be outlaying a bunch of cash. So I find the construction loans to be a lot more comfortable. You have a lot more information up front. And in some ways, it forces you to do a bit more due diligence because you've got to get quotes, you've got to get vendors in, you know what you're walking into versus maybe a bit of a blank slate.
Yeah, it's easy to be cavalier when you feel like you got it done. Have you ever looked at a property that you walked away from after you got an appraisal or got some numbers together?
Twice.
I've
done it twice on two different deals, and it was that the amount of work that was required versus the as completed valuation didn't make sense.
Yeah.
I think we have a bit of an idea of what we want a property to look like when we're done with it, and sometimes just a coat of paint and carpet isn't enough. And so there was two deals where when you started to look at the numbers and all the things that it needed, that cost of construction far exceeded the as completed value, and then you're sort of putting additional dollars into an asset that just doesn't give you what you need. I could have pared back the renovation, but the downside would have been, in my mind, I would have felt like I would have had a property that was subpar from what I wanted as far as the finished product.
Yeah.
nice siding, newer windows, those sort of things. I don't want to skimp on those. Those are deferred maintenance that is going to bite you later if you can't do them now.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.